Hi, I'm Brad Sarin, Superintendent of the Sun Prairie Area School District, and this is a screencast on our mid-year update to the Board of Education and the community relative to the 2022-2023 scorecard. It's really a follow-up to the screencast that I created for the board, which was Scorecards 101. And so this is a snapshot in time of how the school district is doing relative to the goals that we've set around the strategic framework that was recommended by our steering committee to the Board of Education. And so you'll see the scorecard divided into the categories or the pillars of which are embedded in the strategic framework. And from there, then you can see some of the initiatives that we've engaged in, our highest confidence strategies in order to make progress toward these goals, which are really the board's goals, which are really the community's goals, and then the ways that we're measuring our progress along the way. Some of the vocabulary that you'll see is a concept called stoplighting, meaning that we'll assign a color to the metric that we're using to assess our progress toward that goal. And so if it's green, it means that we've achieved that goal. If it's yellow, it means that we believe that we're on the trajectory to be able to achieve that goal. And if it's red, we're already notifying the board and each other that this is a goal that we're likely not going to achieve this year, and that we might have to change our strategy in order to be able to make progress toward that element in some other way. And so one of the things that we have is the fact that this is a living document. And so there's a lot of detail in here. And while we're not going to be able to sort of read every cell in here, if any board member or any community member has any questions or concerns about the screencast, especially if we don't get to reading verbatim one of the cells, please reach out to us. We're happy to help. And so from here, the first pillar of our strategic framework really has to do with educational excellence. And our assistant superintendent, Stephanie Leonard-Whitty, really is the pillar captain of that area. And so for here, I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie to begin to review our goals and our progress in mid-year for the pillar of educational excellence.
Thanks, Brad. The portion I'll be covering with you in this screencast are the things for which teaching, learning, and equity are the lead process owners for the work. You'll notice in all that I present to you through this screencast, all are connected with our strategic framework, our equity framework, and our instructional framework. As you know, we continue to align all of these documents and all of these practices to align the arrows, as Brad would say. And so you'll notice there's a direct crosswalk from those documents to our work. The first row that I'd like to talk about is our work around the instructional framework. Our why behind the instructional framework is that this is a key strategy or initiative in our efforts to improve instructional practices to have better results or outcomes for all learners. Specifically, we're focusing on our Black and Brown learners and all students having better outcomes. We've learned from other districts that have an instructional framework, they have better outcomes. So that's what we're working towards. Our goal this year is to begin the implementation of our practice profiles, and you can see that we're making nice progress at mid-year, and we'll continue to coach, round, and support staff in the implementation of our first 3 practice profiles. The second row that you'll see is around our disrupting inequity goal. Every site and operational department has a localized problem of practice. They've all identified something where the data clearly shows that we have disparate outcomes based on race. Each site and operational department have identified one. Michael Morgan is rounding and working with their E-teams to identify the problem of practice and enact strategies that will interrupt those disparate outcomes. The next row aligns to our rigorous and coherent teaching. In elementary, the work is being done to identify essential standards in math and literacy to guide universal instruction. That is in service of moving towards tighter alignment and clearer goals for all teachers across the system. This is one of those initiatives that you'll find is not yet cascaded beyond the district scorecard, meaning you might find this on Rick and Sarah's scorecard, but you won't find that yet on a principal's or a site's scorecard, because the work at this point rises or lies at the district level, and in future years it will move down to other areas or other cascaded spots in the system. So elementary is doing that work of identifying essential standards. In secondary, they're doing the work of aligning social emotional instruction into all content areas. So SEL learning, as we know, exists across the system. Some is a standalone instruction through things like SP30, morning meetings, circles, and others are infused within our content areas. What do SEL standards look like in English language arts and in math? And secondary is working on how they can infuse that work throughout the day so that we're meeting students' social emotional needs in all aspects of our schooling environment. And finally, the last section for the Teaching, Learning, and Equity team is creating a culture of care across all learning environments. As you know, in our pandemic recovery, we have identified the need to build strong community, ensure all students feel they belong in our community, and learn with one another how to respond when students aren't feeling safe or valued. So the elementary strategy for this is ensuring that we have responsive classroom strategies in all of our elementary sites. And at the secondary level, we are expanding our restorative practices work that is school-wide at 6-8. We'll move up to the 9-12 level next year. And again, we've infused many things through second step, social emotional learning. We've done a lot of work with developmental designs to build community at the secondary level. And so that will be one that you will see expanding or cascaded down to the sites, because that's work that's being done at the site level this year. So I'm going to turn it to Janet to talk about our culture of engagement and inclusion. And I welcome any feedback, questions, or comments about the Teaching, Learning, and Equity section if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Janet Rossiter, Assistant Superintendent of Operations. And within this category, we've got three primary areas that we're looking at. One is employee retention. One is our stay interviews, which are an opportunity for our supervisors and our employees to connect. And then the third one is just an assessment of our employees on how they're feeling about working in the Sun Prairie Area School District. This area is really important to us because the employees are the backbone of the organization to support all the educational initiatives and the learning that happens in our classrooms. So it's really an important part by being focused on these different areas. The stay interviews were first conducted this past year, and we were really surprised and happy with how well they turned out for both the supervisors and the employees. It was just a great chance. We've done exit interviews for a long time, but I'd like to talk of them somewhat like as an autopsy, that the employee is gone and there's really not a lot of good information that you can get it in from that. And this is an opportunity to connect with people, find out while they're working with us what it is that makes them want to stay, and gives us as the leaders of the organization opportunities to just improve our practices of employee satisfaction. Then at the end of the year, we'll take a survey from all things considered. This is a great place to work, and see what our employees are feeling at that point in time. I'll turn it over to Brad with some community engagement.
Thanks, Janet. So the culture, the pillar that is labeled the culture of engagement and inclusion really has two areas. It's got a focus on employees, and then the second focus is really on communication and engagement of our community, our families, our staff, our students across the 10 municipalities and 79 square miles of the Sun Prairie Area School District. And so the second area is really focused on our efforts to strategically communicate with all of those different care holders. And so the first area that we really focus on is, and this is a fixed cascade, so every single one of our 15 schools has to engage in this process, but family engagement plans have to be developed and posted in each one of our schools, and they have to be developed in coordination with diverse caregiver, parent voice and input. And so we're happy to say that all schools have administered a survey question and also have gone through that process of posting their family engagement plans to the web pages. We also have engaged in a school playbook implementation, meaning that there's expectations that are fixed and cascaded to each one of our 15 schools that's aligned to a communications plan to ensure more consistent communication to parents and caregivers across our 15 schools. And we're happy to report that there's a good progress on how sites are consistently communicating across the school district. Just scroll down a little bit, Steph. We also measure that by a survey question that says, overall, how satisfied are you with the school district? And so schools have the family engagement plans in place. They've also gone through a process of dipsticking that measure to try to sort of test to see if the strategies are working or not mid-year. And so we're making good progress there relative to that survey question. The last strategy that we have that really focuses on engaging our community is the implementation of our community schools. And so the sites across our school district that have community schools have really a needs assessment and strategies necessary to make progress toward the expectations of each one of the site that they've found. And from here, we're indicating that we're on the right trajectory and leadership is happening, but we're on the right trajectory to begin to develop a rich sense of programming at each one of the community school sites that is aligned to the needs assessment of that community. And so the last pillar of the strategic framework is really focused on operational excellence. That is facilities, and that's grounds, and that's transportation, and all of the different elements that make sure that the school district is running effectively. Janet Rossiter oversees this pillar, and so I'm going to turn it over to Janet.
This area of the scorecard is not directly cascaded to each of the sites. However, it's really important to acknowledge that everybody in the school district has a huge part in us meeting the goals of this strategic pillar. The very first area is fund balance. We will not know whether or not we have been able to increase our fund balance until the end of the year, but that's everyone that has budget management working together to try to make sure that our funds are invested the most in a way that it brings the most value for the district, and conserving funds to the point that we can, to make sure that we've got some carryover for the next year to help us with our bond rating. Then the next area is making sure that all of our budgeting is strategic in nature and aligned to our district strategic plan and our goals for the year. So we've been very purposeful on setting up a process that takes all of the expenditures for the year and makes sure that what goes on as far as for priority first are those initiatives and those things that we have the highest confidence strategy that will help us move the needle on student excellence. Then in addition to that, we are working much more in trying to make sure that we are looking at data. We know how we're spending our money, but how does that compare to other school districts in the area and in the state? So we're using Forecast 5 and providing a lot more data that we're analyzing at the cabinet level and at the senior leaders level to just make sure that while we have our money aligned to our highest strategy confidence interval strategic initiatives, that we also are making sure that that is in alignment with other organizations. And then the last thing is the community has invested a great deal of funds in the last 10 plus years in our facilities, and making sure that we have a plan for maintaining that investment. It's important to show that our citizens have had their investment protected, and that we're making sure that we are managing our limited funds in the best way possible for making sure that we are showing that stewardship of funds. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brad to wrap it up.
Thanks, Janet, and thanks, Stephanie. So that's a brief overview of a very complex, grid of assessments for the school district. I want to remind everybody that these are really vital signs, meaning that if you go to the doctor, you're likely going to have the doctor check sort of like the initial measures of health. They're going to check your blood pressure, and then they're going to check your pulse. They may look at your pupil, and they may look at your reflexes. And those are all just like a basic understanding of indicators of health. And so what I'd like everybody to know is that on the district scorecard, those are what we've deemed as indicators of success. And if you dig into department scorecards, and school scorecards, you'd be really able to look at all of the other ways that we in an aligned environment measure success and try to plan to support our students and our families. And so as always, if you have any questions or if you have any concerns, we love to talk about this stuff, especially me. Please feel free to reach out. We're happy to help. Thanks for tuning in. Take care.